Hello everyone, Dr. Bennett here. So I'd like to provide a review for your Unit 1 test. All right, so for item number 1 through 5, we want to select true or false. Then we want to select the appropriate answer about the graph in each statement below. So number 1 says the x value for A and D have negative y values. So we can see that A is here in quadrant 2, and D is also in quadrant 2. So I'm going to name our quadrants, quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 quadrants and you name them counterclockwise. So the question asks the x value for A and D have negative y values. But we know in quadrant 2, the x values are negative and the y values are positive. So indeed, the x and y values for A and D will not have negative y values. So that answer will be false. Number 2, B can be represented as -3, 2. So if we go to -3 on the x-axis and go to +2, we're at point D, not B. So this will be false. Number 3, the y-intercept is C. So point C lies here on the y-axis. So that will be true. Number 4, one of the points is -2, -4. So if I go to the x-axis to -2 and down to -4, that will put me at point E. So that is indeed one of the points. So number 4 will be true. And number 5, A is in quadrant 2. And as you can see, here's point A. That is indeed in quadrant 2. So that will be true. All right, so that is how you do numbers 1 through 5. All right, so for this item, it says find 7 ordered pairs to the equation y equals 6 subtract x squared. So we have y all right. So we have, let's try it again. So we have y is equal to 6 subtract x squared. Now, based on the equation alone, I can determine which graph aligns to that particular equation. So when I look at my x term, it has an exponent of 2, so it's squared. So that tells me that it's going to form a parabola facing either up or down. But then I also notice that there's a negative sign in front of the x squared term. So that tells me that that will be a negative parabola. The only option that has a negative parabola is C. So that tells me A is incorrect, B is incorrect, and D is incorrect. So I know the correct graph is C, but now I need to find the 7 ordered pairs. So I'm just going to substitute my x values in the equation for x. So I'm going to start with the -3. So I have y is equal to 6 subtract x squared, which will be -3 squared. So that will be 6 subtract -3 squared is 9. So 6 subtract 9 is -3. So y will be -3. And I'm going to do the same for all the values. So y is equal to 6 subtract -2 squared. So that would be 6 subtract 4. And 6 subtract 4 is 2. So +2. Then we have y is equal to 6 subtract -1 squared. That would be 6 subtract -1 times -1 is 1. So 6 subtract 1 is 5. So we have y is equal to 6 subtract 0 squared. That will be 6 subtract 0, which is 6. And then we have y is equal to 6 subtract a +1 squared. So that would be 6 subtract 1, which is equal to 5. And then we have y is equal to 6 subtract 2 squared. So that would be 6 subtract 4 because 2 squared is 4. That would give you a +2. And then we have y is equal to 6 subtract 3 squared. And that will be 6 subtract 9, which is equal to -3. All right. And don't forget, this is a parabola. So my y values at some point has to start to repeat. So we have -3, 2, 5, 6. Now we're going to start repeating again, 5, 2, -3. If your values do not repeat and it's a parabola, that means you did something wrong mathematically. But this is how you will solve a problem similar to this one. All right, so for this item, we want to find the x and y intercepts. All right, so don't forget the x and y intercepts is where the figure crosses the graph. So I see that the figure crosses here, here, and here for my x-axis. So those points will be -5, this will be a +1, and this will be a +4. So for my x-intercepts, I'm looking for -5, +1, and +4. So looking at my answer choices, I know A is wrong, B is wrong, C is wrong. So the only answer, it has to be D. When I look at my x-intercepts, I have 4, 1, and -5. And then my y-intercept is +4. And if I look at the graph, I notice that the figure crosses right here, which is indeed +4. So that is how you would do an item similar to this one. All right, so for this particular item, we want to use the given conditions to write an equation for the line and point slope form. All right, so we have our slope. So we'll say slope is, don't forget, slope is equal to m. So m is equal to -4. And we're passing through the point -7, +4. So don't forget the -7, being that we're doing point slope, will be my x1, and the 4 will be my y1. So I just need to take those numbers and plug them into the slope in a slope form, point slope form. So we have y subtract 4 is equal to -4 times the quantity x plus 7. Now, it is x plus 7 because, as you can see, the 7 is negative, and in the equation for point slope, I notice that I have a negative sign, so that becomes a positive, and you can see that that matches answer A, and that's how you would do an item similar to that one. All right, so for this particular item, it says use the given conditions to write an equation for the line and slope intercept form. Now, don't forget, slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to write that right here. Y is equal to mx plus b. That is slope intercept form. Now, I'm given 2 points. Because I'm given 2 points, I need to find the slope first. And as you can see, we have the slope formula there. So the 5 will be my x1, the 3 will be my y1, the 0 will be my x1, and the -3 will be my, x2, and the -3 will be my y2. All right, so now let's plug that into the slope of a line formula. So that would be -3 subtract 3 over 0 subtract 5. All right, so -3 subtract 3 will give you a -6, and 0 subtract 5 will give you a -5. So we have -6 over -5. And because both the 6 and the 5 are, both of them are negative, that becomes a +6 over 5. So my slope m is equal to 6 over 5. All right, now just from the slope alone, if I look at my items here, I see that A is wrong, B is wrong, 6, the slope is 6 over 5, and D is wrong because that's 5 over 6. So I know the answer has to be C, but I can't just stop there because I need to also find my y-intercept. So I need to find my B. All right, so my equation is y is equal to mx plus b. Now, it doesn't matter which point you choose, the 5, 3, or the 0, -3. But for this problem, I'm going to choose the 5, 3 as my point. That would be my x and my y. And then my m, my slope, will be 6 over 5. So now I just need to substitute those values into the equation. So that would be 3 is equal to my slope, which is 6 over 5, times my x, which is 5, plus b. All right, so now I can cross cancel the two 5s like this, and I'm left with just 6. But if you can't see the cross canceling, if you do 6 times 5, that would give you 30. And then 30 divided by this 5 will give you 6. So I have 3 is equal to 6 plus b. All right, now I need to get the b by itself. So I need to move that 6 over with the 3. And I'm going to do that by subtracting. You do the inverse to move it. Because it's positive, you do the inverse to move it. 3 subtract 6 will give you -3. So -3 is equal to b. And as you can see, I do have the -3 right here. So that is why C is indeed the correct answer. And that's how you would do an item similar to that one. All right, so for this particular item, I want to rewrite the equation 8x subtract 2y subtract 6 equals 0 in slope-intercept form. Then I want to give the slope and y-intercept, and then I want to use the slope and y-intercept to graph the linear function. So I'm going to start with my equation, and since I want it in slope-intercept form, that means I need to solve for the variable y. So I have 8x subtract 2y subtract 6 is equal to 0. So the first thing I want to do is bring my -6 over with the 0 by adding. You do the inverse to move it. So that cancels out. So I'm left with 8x subtract 2y is equal to a +6. All right, so the next thing I want to do is move that 8x over with the 6. And I'm going to do that by subtracting 8x from each side. Because it's positive, you do the inverse to move it. So that cancels out. So I'm left with -2y is equal to -8x plus 6. All right, so the -2 and the y together implies multiplication. I need to undo that by dividing. You do the inverse. So I'm going to divide each term by -2. So this cancels out. Y is equal to, now -8 divided by a -2 is a +4. So that would be 4x. And 6 divided by a -2 will give you a -3. So my equation in slope-intercept form is y equals 4x subtract 3. So for A, I'm going to write y is equal to 4x subtract 3. Now it asks me to identify the slope of the line. That is the value that's with the x. So that is 4. And then my y-intercept is the other number, the number that's by itself. And don't forget to take the sign. So that would be -3. Now I need to graph it. So don't forget, you always start to graph an equation in slope-intercept form. You always start with the y-intercept. The y-intercept is -3. So I'm going to put a point at -3, which is right here. Now I see that my slope is 4. But I'm going to write my slope as a fraction, which will be 4 over 1. So that will be rise over run. So from this point, I'm going to go up 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to go 1 to the right, and that will put me right here. And then you just want to draw a line through those points. So we went up 4 because the 4 is positive, and we run 1 to the right. And that is how you would do an item similar to that one. All right, so for this particular item, it says I want to graph the linear function by plotting the x and y intercepts. And that means that I want to get the x and y on the same side of the equal sign by itself, and then solve for each variable. So how would that look? So that would be, I'm going to rewrite the equation, 3x subtract 6y subtract 6 is equal to 0. So the first thing I need to do is to move that -6 over with the 0 by doing the inverse. So I'm going to add 6 to each side because I need to get the 3x and the -6y by itself. And 0 plus 6 will give you 6. All right, so now that I have the 3x and the -6y on the same side of the equal sign by itself, I just simply take the 3x and set it equal to 6 and take the negative 6y and set it equal to 6. So that would be 3x is equal to 6 and negative 6y is equal to 6. Now I just simply need to solve for each variable. So the 3 and the x together implies multiplication. To undo multiplication, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to divide each term by 3. That cancels out. So here, x is equal to 6 divided by 3 will give you 2. Over here, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 6 because I want to get the y by itself. So y is equal to 6 divided by negative 6 will give you a negative 1. Now, as an ordered pair, x equals 2. So that tells me that this will be 2, 0 as an ordered pair. And the y equals negative 1, if I want to write that as an ordered pair, that will be 0, negative 1. All right, so when we look at our answer choices, A is 0, 2, negative 1, 0. So that tells me that that one is incorrect. B is 0, negative 2, 1, 0. That is incorrect. C is 0, negative 1, which it does match, but this one is negative 2, 0. I need a positive 2. So D will be the correct answer because we have 0, negative 1, which is here, and 2, 0, which is here. So those are my intercepts. And that's how you would graph it, as you can see there. So D is the correct answer. So that's how you would do an item similar to that one. All right, so for this item, we want to graph the equation in the rectangular coordinate system. So we have x is equal to negative 4. So don't forget, if you can recall when we did our homework, we indicated that if x is equal to a value, so here I have x is equal to negative 4, that tells me that this will be a vertical line. So that means that you will go on the x-axis, put a point at negative 4, and draw a vertical line. And the only one that's like that will be C. Now, if it was y equal to a number, that would be a horizontal line. But we have x is equal to negative 4, so C is the answer, and that's how you would do an item similar to that one. All right, so for this particular item, it says solve and check the following linear equation. So we have 9 equals 5 times the quantity x subtract 4, subtract the quantity x subtract 5. So I'm going to rewrite that equation. So we have 9 is equal to 5 times the quantity x subtract 4, subtract the quantity x subtract 5. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do in solving this is to distribute the 5 with everything inside the parentheses. So that will give me 9 is equal to 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 4 will give you a negative 20. Now, because there's a subtraction sign in front of this quantity, that's understood to be a negative 1. So I'm going to distribute this negative 1 with everything inside the parentheses. So negative 1 times x will give you a negative x. And negative 1 times a negative 5 will give you a positive 5. All right, so now that we've gotten rid of our parentheses, now we need to combine like terms. And the like terms here are 5x and negative x, and negative 20 and positive 5 are like terms. So I'm going to combine my 5x and my negative x. So that's the same as saying, what is 5x subtract 1x? That will be 4x. And what is negative 20 plus 5? That would give you a negative 15. All right, so now I have 9 equals 4x subtract 15. So I'm going to simply move the negative 15 over with the 9. I'm going to do that by doing the inverse. So I'm going to add 15 to each side. All right, so this cancels out. And when you do 9 plus 15, you get 24. So 24 is equal to 4x. So the 4 and the x together implies multiplication. To undo multiplication, I'm going to divide each side by 4. So that cancels out. And 24 divided by 4 will give you 6. So x is equal to 6. Now, with that being said, I need to plug that back in to make sure that it works. So for x in the original equation, I'm going to plug 6 there, here, and here. All right, so this will be, I'm gonna write it down here. 9 is equal to 5 times the quantity 6 subtract 4, subtract the quantity 6 subtract 5. All right, so that's 9 is equal to 6 subtract 4 will give you 2. So 5 times 2. Subtract 6 subtract 5 is 1. So 5 times 2 will give you 10. So 5 times 2 is 10 subtract 1. So 9 is equal to 10 subtract 1 is 9. So since I got 9 on both sides of the equal sign, that tells me that 6 is indeed the correct answer. So my answer will be A, and then I will put 6 here inside of the braces. And that's how you'll do an item similar to that one. All right, so for this particular item, it says that we need to solve and check the linear equation. And you can see here that we have fractions. So the goal here is to get the x's on both sides. The x's on one side and the 18 on the other. All right, so how does that look? So I have 18 subtract x over 5 is equal to x over 4. So the first thing I want to do is move that x over 5 over with the x over 4. And I'm going to do that by adding because there's a subtraction sign in front of it. So that means I need to do the inverse to move it. So this would cancel out, leave me with just 18 on that side. So now I'm going to rewrite it as x over 4 plus x over 5 is equal to 18. Now that I have the x's on the same side, I see that I'm adding fractions. So that means I need a common denominator. So what is the common denominator between 4 and 5? So those numbers are consecutive numbers, which means that they're one after the other. Like if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, consecutive numbers. And when you have consecutive numbers, to get the common denominator, you just multiply them together. So 4 times 5 is 20. So 20 is my common denominator. And bring down my addition sign. Now to get from 4 to 20, I must multiply by 5 because 5 times 4 is 20. And what you do to the denominator, you also do to the numerator. So x times 5 will give you 5x. Now over here, to get from 5 to 20, I must multiply by 4 because 5 times 4 is 20. And I multiply the x by 4 as well. So 4 times x, that will give you 4x. Is equal to 18. All right, so now that I have the same common denominator, I see that my variables are the same. The 4 has 1x, the 5 has 1x. Those are like terms. I can combine them together. So 5x plus 4x will give you 9x. So I have 9x over 20 is equal to 18. Now I'm going to write that 18 as a fraction so I can cross multiply them because I have two ratios. So now I'm going to cross multiply. All right, so 9x times 1 would give you 9x. And 18 times 20 will give you 360. The 9x together implies multiplication. So I'm going to divide both sides by 9 to get rid of the 9, to get the x by itself. Now, when you do 360 divided by 9, you will get 40. So 36 divided by 9 is 4, plus that 0 would give you 40. So my answer is 40. I'm going to plug that back in just to make sure that it works. So we have 18 subtract 40 over 5 is equal to 40 over 4. All right, so that would be 18 subtract 40 divided by 5 is 8, and 40 divided by 4 is 10. 18 subtract 8 is 10. 10 is equal to 10. That is a true statement. Therefore, 40 is indeed the correct answer. So I will select A and write 40. All right, and that's how you would do an item similar to this one. All right, so for this particular item, it says that I want to, the following rational equation has denominators that contain variables. For this equation A, write the value or values of the variable that makes the denominator 0. And then these are the restrictions on the variable. And then keeping with the restrictions in mind, we want to solve the equation. So Here we have, as you can see, x, the quantity x subtract 3. And then we have x plus 5. Now, in your homework, this was already factored. This trinomial was already factored. But here in your homework, it's not factored. I mean, on this test review, it's not factored. But whatever this quantity is and this quantity is, that will be your common denominator. So when I factor that trinomial, this would factor to x subtract 3 times x plus 5. That's my denominator. That's my common denominator. So this would be 1 over the quantity x subtract 3 plus, oh, I'm sorry, not plus, subtract 4 over the quantity x plus 5 is equal to 8 over the quantity x subtract 3 and the quantity x plus 5. So that's my common denominator. So now I'm going to get rid of these fractions. Now watch carefully what I do here. Now I have x subtract 3 here, correct? To get my common denominator, to get this, that means the x plus 5 is missing. And so I will multiply the denominator by x plus 5 and the numerator by x plus 5. So that will be 1 times the quantity x plus 5. I'm just not going to multiply that denominator and write all of that out because it's not necessary. Now over here for this fraction, the 4 plus 5 is here. If I want this, what's missing? The x subtract 3 is missing. So I will multiply the denominator by x subtract 3 and the numerator by x subtract 3. That would be 4 times the quantity x subtract 3. Now, since the x subtract 3 and the x plus 5 is already here, which would be my common denominator, I just simply need this value that's in the numerator. So equal to 8. Now I've gotten rid of all my fractions. Now I just need to solve it. So this is a positive 1. So even if I distribute the positive 1, I will still have x plus 5. So I'm just going to write x plus 5. All right. So here, the negative 4, I have to distribute with everything inside the parentheses. So negative 4 times x will give you negative 4x. And negative 4 times a negative 3 will give you a positive 12. And we will set that equal to 8. So now I need to combine like terms. And my like terms are x and negative 4x. Those are the same. And positive 5 and positive 12 are the same. So now let's combine them. So that's the same as saying 1x subtract 4x, which will give you negative 3x. Then we have positive 5 plus a positive 12. That would give you 17. And that's equal to 8. All right. So now I have negative 3x plus 17 is equal to 8. So I'm going to subtract 17 because you do the inverse to move it. And I need to move it over there with the 8 because I'm trying to solve for x. So I have negative 3x is equal to, now 8 subtract 17 will give you a negative 9. Now we're going to divide both sides by negative 3. So that cancels out. So I have x is equal to positive 3. All right, now let's go back up here because it says that this equation, these are rational equations, and we have variables in the denominator. So we need to know which value or values that will make the denominator 0. So if I put a positive 3 here, 3 subtract 3 will give me 0. So that tells me x cannot be equal to 3 because that will be undefined. And then here, if I put a negative 5 plus 5, that would give me 0. So x cannot equal negative 5 because that will make a 0 in the denominator as well. So when I solve the equation, I can't have the answer of 3 because that would be undefined. And I can't have the answer of negative 5. But you can see here, when I solve the equation, I got positive 3, which that is one of my restrictions. So that tells me that this answer will be no solution. So the solution set is the empty set. But now up here, I have to go write my restrictions. So I said x can't be 3 and x can't be -5 because it will make 0 in the denominator. And you will probably remember this problem type from your homework. So this is how you would do an item similar to this one. All right, so for this particular problem, I want to solve this literal equation. And don't forget, literal equations contain mostly variables. And this one, I want to solve the formula for t. So here I have f is equal to p plus PRT. All right, so I'm solving for t. So the first thing I want to do is move that p that's by itself. You want to always start when a variable is just sitting out there by itself. The p is positive, so I'm going to do the inverse to move it. So I'm going to subtract p from each side. So this cancels out. So I'm left with, on the left-hand side, f subtract p. And on the right-hand side, I'm left with p, r, t. All right, the p, the r, and the t together implies multiplication. To undo multiplication, I'm going to divide. I'm going to divide each side by pr. So this cancels. So now I'm left with t. So t is equal to f subtract p all over pr. And that is how you would do an item similar to this one. All right, so for this particular item, I want to solve using the substitution method. But you would notice that one of the variables is not isolated. I need to solve one of these equations for one of the variables. I'm going to solve the second equation for the variable y because that one's easier to eliminate, it's easy to isolate that y in the second equation. So I have 2x subtract y is equal to 11. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is subtract this 2x. It's positive, so I do the inverse to move it. So now I'm left with negative y is equal to negative 2x plus 11. All right, so my variable can't be negative. That y can't be negative, but that's understood to be a -1. So I'm going to divide each term by -1. So I'm left with y is equal to, now -2 divided by -1 is a +2. So a +2x. And then 11 divided by -1 is a -11. So I'm left with y is equal to 2x subtract 11. Now that I've solved for one of the variables, I'm going to take this information and plug it into the first equation for the variable y. So I'm left with 5x plus 9 times the quantity 2x subtract 11 is equal to -53. All right, so now that I have the same variable x, the next thing I want to do is use the distributive property and distribute the 9 with everything inside the parentheses. So that gives me 5x plus 9 times 2x will give you 18x. 9 times -11 will give you a -99, and that is equal to -53. All right, so the next thing we want to do is combine these like terms because they both have 1x. So 5x plus 18x will give you 23x. Now I'm going to bring this -99 over with the -53 by doing the inverse. So I'm going to add 99. That cancels out, and that would give me -53 plus 99 is a +46. So I'm left with 23x is equal to 46. All right, so now I'm going to divide each side by 23 because the 23 and the x together implies multiplication. And so I need to do the inverse, which is division. And so when you do 46 divided by 23, x is equal to +2. So now that I have x is equal to +2, I just simply need to plug it into one of the equations, the original equations, to solve for y. I'm going to plug it into the second equation. So that would be 2 times 2 subtract y is equal to 11. Now 2 times 2 is 4. So 4 subtract y is equal to 11. So the next thing I'm going to do, I need to bring that 4 over with the 11 by subtracting because I need to do the inverse to move it. So that cancels out. So I'm left with negative y is equal to, and when you do 11 subtract 4, you will get a positive 7. All right, but again, my y can't be negative, so that's understood to have a negative 1 in front of it. So I'm going to divide each side by negative 1, and the negative cancels out. So when you do 7 divided by negative 1, I have y is equal to negative 7. All right, so now my answer will be A. And it says the solution set is, in the braces, I'm going to put my parenthesis. Then I'm going to put 2, comma, negative 7. And now I'm going to close the parentheses. And that is how you would do an item similar to this one. All right, so for this item, I want to solve using the addition method. But I noticed that if I add the two equations together, I would not eliminate one of the variables. So that tells me that for the first equation, I'm going to have to multiply that equation by negative 2. By multiplying by negative 2, it will allow me to eliminate my x variable. And don't forget, I need to multiply everything by negative 2. So negative 2 times x will give me a negative 2x. Negative 2 times 2y will give me a negative 4y. And negative 2 times 9 would give me a negative 18. All right, and then the second equation will stay the same. 2x plus 3y is equal to 15. All right, so now I just simply need to add them together. So negative 2x plus 2x will cancel out. Negative 4y plus 3y will give you a negative y, and that is equal to, and when you do negative 18 plus 15, that will give you a negative 3. So I have negative y equals negative 3. However, my y can't be negative, that variable can't be negative. So I'm going to divide by negative 1, so that cancels out. And when you do negative 3 divided by a negative 1, y is equal to positive 3. So now that I solved for y, I just need to plug it into one of the equations. And I'm going to plug it into the first equation. So that will be x plus 2 times y, which is 3, is equal to 9. So that would be x plus 6, 2 times 3 is 6, is equal to 9. So now we're going to do the inverse to move that 6 by subtracting. So x is equal to, and when you do 9 subtract 6, you get positive 3. So x is positive 3. So here the answer choice is A. That's the correct answer. I'll put my parentheses inside my braces, and that will be 3, comma 3. Close parentheses. And that's how you would do an item similar to this one. All right, so for this particular item, it says solve using any method. So I can use the addition method, or I can use substitution. In this instance, I'm going to actually use the addition method. And I'm going to eliminate my x variables by multiplying the second equation by positive 2. So the first equation will stay the same, 8x plus 2y is equal to 2. Now the second equation, 2 times negative 4x will give you a negative 8x. 2 times a negative y will give you a negative 2y. And we set that equal to 2 times 8, 16. Now I can add them together. All right, so we're going to add them together. So 8 subtract 8, that cancels out. 2 plus a negative 2, that will also cancel out. So that will give me 0 plus 0. And then 2 plus 16 will give you 18. All right, so 0 plus 0 is 0. So 0 is equal to 18. That is not a true statement. 0 is not equal to 18. Now, because 0 is not equal to 18 and both my variables have been eliminated, the answer will be C, there is no solution. All right, and that's how you would do an item similar to this one. All right, so for this particular item, it says here, you're choosing between two health clubs. Club A offers membership for a fee of $17 plus a monthly fee of $14. All right, so to join Club A, I'm going to write that as Y is equal to $17 just to join. Then you have to pay $14 per month, but we don't know how many months. Club B offers a membership fee of just walking through the door. You have to pay $25 plus you're going to pay $10 per month, but we don't know how many months. After how many months will the total cost of each health club be the same? And then we need to know what will be the total cost for each club. All right, so since I have my y's are both solved for, you simply set the equations equal to each other. So 17 plus 14x is equal to 25 plus 10x. All right, and we just need to solve for x. So I'm going to subtract 10x because 10 is smaller than 14. And I just want to keep my variable positive. So that cancels out. So I have 17 plus, now when you do 14x, subtract 10x, that leaves me with 4x is equal to 25. Now I'm going to bring the 17 over to the 25 by subtracting, because I want to do the inverse to move it. So on the right-hand side of the equation, I am left with 4x is equal to, and when you do 25 subtract 17, you're left with 8. The 4 and the x together implies multiplication. To undo multiplication, we divide. So we're going to divide each side by 4. So x is equal to 2. So that tells me in 2 months, the total cost of each health club would be the same. Now I need to determine what that value is. So you can choose either equation, 17 plus 14x, or the 25 plus 10x. I'm going to do the 25 plus 10x. So that'd be 25 plus 10 times 2. So that'd be 25 plus 10 times 2 is 20. And when you do 25 plus 20, you get 45. So that would be $45. So the total cost for each health club will be $45. All right, and that's how you would do an item similar to this one. All right, so this particular item you probably remember from your homework more recently. The selling price of a refrigerator is $622.50. If the markup is 25% of the dealer's cost, what is the dealer's cost of the refrigerator? So let's think of it like this. You have to buy the fridge, right? You're going to pay for that fridge. So we're going to say you're going to pay 100% for that fridge. So we'll just say that it is 1x. Plus, the dealer is going to mark it up because the dealer needs to make a profit. So 25%, and don't forget, we changed that 25% to a decimal, so that would be 0.25x. So you're going to pay for the refrigerator and you're going to pay for the markup. And together, the total, you're going to do $622.50. All right. Now, let's solve. I have 1x and 0.25x. Those are like terms because they each have 1x. I can combine them together, so that gives you 1.25x. It's equal to $622.50. All right, so the 1.25x implies multiplication. To undo multiplication, I'm going to divide each side by 1.25. All right, that cancels out. So x is equal to, so when you do $622.50, you divide that by 1.25, you will get 498. So the dealer's cost is $498. So that means that the dealer will pay $498 but the dealer will sell it to you for $622.50. All right, so that's how you would do an item similar to this one. Oh, I think I skipped an item. Oh, here it is. All right, so for this particular item, you probably remember this from your homework as well, more recently, a 6,000 seat theater has tickets for sale at $28 and $40. How many tickets should be sold at each price for a sellout performance to generate a total revenue of $193,200? All right, so if you remember from our homework, we have a 6,000 seat theater, right? So we will have some seats at $28, but we don't know how many. So I'm going to say X. I'm going to have some seats at $40, but I don't know how many. I'm going to say Y, but I know I have a total of 6,000 seats in the theater. Now, I know that some of the seats will be $28. So I'm going to put the 28 with my X. So that'll be 28X. Plus I have some seats that will cost $40 or tickets. So that'll be 40Y. And I know that the total revenue is $193,200. Now, don't forget, when you're setting up your equations, the first equation represents the number of seats. The second equation represents the money. So make sure that they're set up correctly. So now I'm going to use the addition method to solve this. So I'm going to multiply the first equation by -28. And it's just easier to use the addition method to actually solve this one. All right. Now, don't forget, you can also use the substitution method. It doesn't matter. However, here it's just easier to use the addition method. All right, so -28 times X will give you -28X. -28 times Y will give you -28Y. Is equal to, and when you do 6,000 times -28, you get, let's see, -28 times 6,000, -168,000. All right. Now, that's my first equation. I'm going to rewrite that right here. -28X subtract 28Y is equal to -168,000. Now, the second equation stays the same. All right, now I can add them together. So -28X plus 28X will cancel out. So -28Y plus 40Y, that would give you 12Y. And then when you do a -168,000 plus 193,200, you get a positive 25,200. All right, so now I'm going to divide both sides by 12. This cancels out. So when you do 25,200 and divide that by 12, you get Y to be 2,100. All right, now that we have Y, just plug it into one of the original equations to find X. And I'm going to use the first equation. So that'll be X plus 2,100 is equal to 6,000. We're going to subtract 2,100 from each side. So this cancels out. Now, X is equal to, when you do 6,000 subtract 2,100, you get 3,900. All right. So now it says the number of tickets for sale at $28 should be, and don't forget I put the X with the 28, so that would be 3,900. And the tickets, the number of tickets at $40 should be 2,100. All right. And that's how you would do an item similar to that one. I wish you the best of luck on your Unit 1 test. Hopefully you review this recording before engaging in that test. Make sure you study. And if you have any questions prior to taking your Unit 1 test, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. All right, thanks. Bye.